But as soon as I had a line of cocaine, I had to gamble. And the need for gambling just took over so desperately. The anxiety, panic attacks, severe depression, suicidal ideology, like all these mental health illnesses. At that point in my life, it would be getting a couple of packets of cocaine, buying hundreds of pounds worth of scratch cards, and then just sniffing lines of cocaine and doing the scratch cards. And that was what it would be all night.
Today's guest is Kiki M. She's in recovery from a gambling and cocaine addiction, and she shares her story now that she's 17 months clean from both addictions. But before we dive into that, I have just one favor to ask from you. There's so many of you that watch this channel regularly, but you're not subscribers yet. If you do me the favor of subscribing, then my promise to you in return is that I'm going to continue to put out content each and every day that spreads the message that gambling addiction is real, but so are the resources to get better, whether it's you or someone you love. Kiki, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I think that noting that you just said you're about to have a very important birthday, we're going to get this show on the road right away. Why don't you tell me about how you got involved with gambling so that the audience can gain the context?
So I started gambling around 16 years old, started with scratch cards, and that kind of stayed the theme throughout my 20s. I have close cross addictions. I have a cocaine addiction. It would come hand in hand with the scratch cards and things like that. In 2016, I had a miscarriage, and that kind of traumatic event took me to playing online bingo, and that's where I started. But then I found the side games, and that really piqued my interest. And then I found the slots, and once I'd found that, there wasn't going any back because it was more fast paced. And I'd put myself on several different things to stop myself from gambling. That lasted not very long, a couple of years where I tried to abstain from gambling or just doing demo slots, free spins, that kind of thing. Then I had another traumatic event happen in 2019, and that's when I can say my gambling addiction really did escalate very, very badly. And over that time, I became very manipulative. I became a liar and a liability, to be honest with you. You know, it just took me, I always say it took my soul away. I wasn't me anymore. And I had a cocaine addiction for many, many years, but I always say my gambling addiction was so much worse than my cocaine addiction. My gambling addiction really did take my soul away, and it brought me to my knees. It took me to really dark places, you know, not eating very well, not looking after myself. And it just got to the point of just eating like one meal a day, just to survive, and not paying my bills, and, you know, stealing money that didn't belong to me. And in the end, it just got to the point where I was going to end my life or I was going to get help. And after going and sitting at the train station for a period of time, I went back home and then I rang to get help.
Wow. So that was that. Wow. Let's see, where do we start? I guess the question that jumps to the top of my mind is, okay, right in the beginning, you said that you were getting involved with scratch cards, and at the same time, you were having a comorbidity, which was a cocaine addiction. You know, talk me through how those go hand in hand. Like, what would a night be like at that point in your life?
At that point in my life, it would be getting a couple of packets of cocaine, buying hundreds of pounds worth of scratch cards, and then just sniffing lines of cocaine and doing the scratch cards. And that was what it would be all night. And then when the scratch cards would run out or the cocaine run out, you get more. You know, you go to the shop that's 24 hours to get more scratch cards, which there was one not far from my house. And that was just kind of the repetitive cycle. But with the slots, it became, I isolated pretty quickly with the slots. It became, I can't gamble sober. Never been able to gamble sober. I find it very, very boring. So I used to try and gamble sober, but it just didn't do anything for me. So I needed the cocaine to gamble. And that's kind of when I recognised I had a real problem. It's because cocaine had always been my problem. But then it got to a point where I didn't really care about the cocaine. I just wanted to gamble. But I didn't get the same enjoyment without the cocaine for gambling. So I just used to buy a little bit of cocaine just to have one or two lines. And then I would be hyperfixed and obsessed with gambling from that point forward. And then that was just a recycle. It never stopped. It never ever stopped. And it just that was just like my routine. Every week, my routine would be, I wasn't an everyday user, so to speak, but I was definitely 4 times a week. More if I could, less if I didn't have the money.
Why did the transition happen from just using the cocaine to then using the cocaine with gambling? Like, was there a particular moment? Was there a particular reason that led you to pick up gambling?
Well, in the new year of 2015, I'd found out I was pregnant, and obviously I wasn't going to sniff cocaine when I was pregnant. So I thought, oh, we had a big party arranged for that new year, and I found out just a few days before that I was pregnant. And so I thought, oh, I'll just get a Chinese and play some bingo while everyone else is getting smashed for New Year's. And that's just kind of how it started. And then when I lost the baby, I realized that when I gambled, I couldn't think. It was like my mind was completely blank. And I'd never had that feeling before of my mind being completely blank and void of any kind of emotions or feelings. I was just so hyper fixed on the games that I was playing. And I think that level of escapism, that is what became addictive to me as well. And I think that's why it escalated to the way that it did, because it gave me a level of escapism that I'd never experienced before.
So the online bingo that kind of picked up after the scratch tickets, walk me through like what that is, because I never really played too much bingo. I remember playing maybe on like cruise ships, but in my gambling, like most of it was sports betting, and then it turned into online slots, kind of the same pattern. But what was it like playing the online bingo? And you mentioned that you were isolating at the time. Like, kind of like what was life like at this point?
So when it was bingo, I wasn't so much isolated when I was on the bingo. Bingo is just, the numbers come up and you fill your ticket up, but it's very slow. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a room online, there's a room for hundreds of people. I mean, your chances of winning are pretty slim. But then when I found the side games and I realised how quick you could win, that's when I went onto the slots. And it was when I got into the slots in 2019, it would be I would go out with my friends or be around my friends' houses and having a drink or whatever, and I would just be sat in the corner with my phone on charge, gambling. I would not be talking to anyone. I stopped wanting to socialise, and I'd be making excuses to leave early, making excuses to leave. And it got to the point where I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want anyone to be around me. I like to gamble in my own house by myself, completely in one living, pretty much living in one room, and just cut off from the world. I wouldn't speak to anybody when I was taking drugs or getting gambling. I wouldn't, answer my phone. It was just me and my phone to gamble, and that was it. I didn't like an ounce of noise in that. I mean, not even the TV on for the most part, like it was just completely in a dark room, just isolated in that zone of just gambling and taking cocaine.
I can relate to that. Like, when I would be around other people that didn't gamble the same way that I gambled, I'd feel like they would judge me if they saw what I was doing, and then like they'd also slow me down. And so I can completely relate to the isolation. Side games, that's just slot machines, or did it start with something else? Did it just jump right into slots?
It's just like mini slots that you can play while you're waiting for the numbers of the bingo to come in. And you
Mm-hmm.
just play these little mini side games, but you can get the bigger version on the actual slots start page. Um, and yeah, it didn't take me long. Once I discovered them, I was done with the bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo was so slow paced compared to what slots are for me, and that was a much faster thing. So once I got on the slots and I found like my favourite games, so to speak, that
Mm-hmm.
was it. It was just me in the slots from there.
Yeah. I know that feeling too. Um, okay, so I'm understanding that the gambling was providing this feeling of escapism. This gambling was turning off all kinds of outside thoughts, like literally all noise was being shut out. What did the financial reality look like at this point? Were you finding yourself in debts from the gambling at this point, or was it kind of just this up and down? Like, what was it like?
It was up and down, but it was a lot of secrecy. We have in the UK, we have something called cash converters. Is where you can put your basically like a pawn shop for your
Mm,
items, and then you can buy them back. And that was kind of like my laptop was constantly in there, and then when it got really really bad, my TV went in there. Um, and I was constantly borrowing money, paying it back just to re-borrow it again, and it was just that repetitive cycle of doing the same thing over and over again. And I always paid people back, but there were times when I'd let people down for payment back where I'd screwed up too much or
Mm.
and stuff. But I always pay people back because then in my mind it was like then I could always re-borrow kind of thing, in good faith.
So at this point, you're borrowing money from people. You're not necessarily saying why, but it seems like people are being willing to give you the money because for most of what has happened, you've been able to pay them back. At what point if at any point, does anyone say like, why do you need this money? Does anyone say, are you gambling? Like, or is this completely hidden and no one has any idea?
Yeah, no one's asked me that question at all. I think,
Hmm.
um, which used to always shock me. I used to always think it was so obvious, but it really wasn't. I mean, a lot of my friends were very shocked when I went to rehab. I was very open, so my friends knew I gambled, but they just didn't know to the extent of how bad it was and the desperation side of it. They knew that I gambled, and it used to annoy one of my friends so much. She'd be like, "Oh, get off your phone, get off your phone," but they didn't realize. They just thought it was a thing that I did when I got on it. They didn't realize that. Yeah, when I was around them, I was gambling and getting on it. But when I got back indoors, it was depressive and dark and alone and desperate and will do literally anything to get that money for the next bet. So they just didn't know the extent of it. So they wasn't concerned. They thought I used to wear a mask, so no one would see what I didn't want them to see. And I think that's carried me throughout my whole life, that mask of what I show to the outside world and what's going on within me. And so it would be really hard for them to know stuff. I wouldn't let people come to my house or anything like that unless it was like a good week where my laptop or my TV was in my home and, I had a bit of money about me. And then, yeah, then everyone could come around, blah, blah, blah. But other than that, I'd be like, I've got anxiety, which I did, anxiety, panic attacks, severe depression, suicidal ideology, like all these mental health illnesses. So it wouldn't seem weird if I just disappeared for a couple of weeks and only gave a little text here and there. Do you know what I mean? Like no one would, it wouldn't flag up because they was kind of used to my behavior of depression and being up and being down.
Yeah, I can imagine like someone just saying, "Oh, she's probably just having a bad week. Like, we don't need to worry about her. She'll be back next week," kind of thing.
Hmm.
But I just think like how many people are experiencing that same thing, right? Like they're dealing with
Yeah.
a depression symptom with gambling as the coping mechanism, and then it's causing more depression. It's just a scary thought. Um, but in your own story, in your own timeline, like there's this back and forth pull between like being up, being down, chasing, borrowing, but then having some good weeks. You say that you went to a rehab. Was that because of a really big loss following the really big loss, or was it just because of the accumulation of events? Like walk us through kind of the end of the gambling.
I think I know the last straw for me was I stole
Mm,
£600 off my ex-partner, and I consistently was doing things like that, and I was just so sick of. I genuinely meant it when I promised that I wouldn't do it again. But as soon as I had a line of cocaine, I had to gamble, and the need for gambling just took over so desperately. And I would just let him down time and time again, and he didn't deserve that, And yeah, I just had enough of my own shit. I really did. I just had enough of my own behavior and just the life that I was living. It was so empty, and I just I just didn't want to live anymore.
mm,
If I couldn't get help, I just didn't want to live. I didn't see the point. I didn't see an end sight to any of it. So yeah, that was my option to end my life. I couldn't even do that. So I rang it's called GamCare's National Helpline in the UK. I
mm.
rang them and I started getting the support that I needed at the end of 2023, early 2024.
I'm glad that you have, and that's exactly why we're talking today. Um, you had mentioned that you had gone to a train station. Was that with a plan to take your own life at the train station?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I wrote letters to the train driver and I wrote letters to the passengers. I wrote a letter to the passengers and a letter to the train driver apologising for the trauma that I was about to inflict on them by taking my own life in this manner. It was the fault of the trauma that I would inflict on other people that stopped me from doing it. Because I just kept thinking to myself I was thinking about my daughter a lot and the pain that I'd cause her and just letting her down again. And then it was the fact that I was going to end my life because of all the trauma that I'd gone through in this addiction. And then I was thinking, well, how can my death would cause trauma to other people. It would cause trauma to my daughter, it would cause trauma to the train driver. And that just overwhelmed me at the time. I couldn't do it. The guilt, just even more guilt and shame piling onto me in that moment.
Gambling should never control your life, and with GamBan, it won't. Whether you're struggling to quit gambling or just want to remove the temptations from your life, GamBan is there to block access to all gambling apps and websites, and they'll do it across all your devices. No loopholes, no excuses, just a powerful tool to help you break a bad habit. Take the first step towards recovery today. Download GamBan and make gambling a thing of the past. Learn more at gamban.com. It's just really scary to think like this is happening all around the world every single day.
Yeah.
Within your story, at any point, did your daughter have an inkling that something was wrong? Whether or not, it was that they knew you were gambling or using, but was there any inkling that anything was wrong with you on her end?
Yeah. She knew that something was up. She didn't realize how bad the gambling was, but she had an inkling that I was taking cocaine. She moved out when she was 15, and we didn't speak for 18 months. So she was pretty angry with me. There's a lot had gone on, and I in a 12-step fellowship program as well as gambling recovery spaces. And she's been back in my life now for about 6 months, and we're just back to being best friends today. She's going to be 19 soon,
Awesome.
and yeah, she's my best friend in the world today. Made my amends with her. She understands, the roads that I took. She understands the trauma event that happened that was beyond our control, and she knows that I was just doing the best things that I thought I could, how to survive. I didn't know how to survive with living in that much pain, and she knows that. And I'm just very open and honest with her. There's nothing that I don't tell her because, we've both been through so much together, and I just always give her that respect to be open and honest. She never ever asked me if I was on drugs or anything like that. So I think I would have had a breakdown if she did. But she just took herself out of the environment. I wasn't a neglectful parent by any means, but I was a very selfish parent for sure.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that things have turned around and that relationship has been rebuilt. Um, Speaking of rebuilding and turning things around, walk me through what it was like to get into recovery. The day that you decided to call GamCare, walk me through what happens next.
So I went to GamCare and spoke to an amazing guy called Will. We did a lot of conversations about where I was at with the gambling. And for the first time in my life, I was just completely honest about the drug taking, about the gambling, the manipulation, the lying, all of it, all the secrets that I'd been keeping in this addiction. I poured my heart and soul out to this man, and he really helped me start the beginnings of kind of not feeling so much shame and less alone for sure. And then we did a few weeks of that, and then he referred me to somewhere else, and then they referred me to a rehab in Wales in the UK. Well, I don't know, people might have class that's a different country. And so in Wales, and then I went to the rehab in Wales called Parkland Place. Absolutely amazing. It's for a company called escalated, and spent 6 weeks there. They concentrate more on cognitive behavioural therapy rather than your actual addiction. They want to work out why you would escape. Like, let's fix what's within. And that did wonders for me. Absolutely wonders for me. I stayed there for 6 weeks. I came home and I went to Gamblers Anonymous for a few weeks there, and then I kind of started going to Cocaine Anonymous. So that's kind of where I stayed with that. But then I found other gambling resources like Bet No More and the Epic Restart Foundation, and they offer a mentoring system for a few weeks, and then group meetings as well. And so I started joining them. Epic does loads of events and workshops to help build your self-esteem, your confidence, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just the last 17 months being within this recovery spaces has just been outstanding. Honestly, outstanding. They help you to create a better life, a life that you don't need to escape from. And it's changed my world in ways that I can't even describe sometimes. It's absolutely amazing what they've done for me in my life.
That is awesome to hear. And I want to hear about what you're doing now and what your life actually looks like now. But I did have one more question regarding like
Yeah.
the treatment itself. So when you went into the rehab, it was a 6 week program. Were you focusing on stopping the gambling? Were you focusing on stopping the substances first, or was it kind of just like general like what to focus on? Like what did you focus on in the recovery? Because I'm thinking from the
So I went in.
perspective, oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the perspective from like someone watching that has cross addictions, right? They're thinking, what do I stop first? What do I focus on first? And so I want to get that context for them.
So for me, the biggest problem I had was gambling. That's how I truly felt. That's what I went into rehab for, was gambling. I didn't realize I had a cocaine addiction, by the way, even though I'd been taking cocaine for 20 odd years. It was just a normal part of my life. I didn't realize it was an actual problem until I went into rehab.
Mm,
And I kind of started to do the work, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I am a cocaine addict as well. So I didn't go into rehab thinking that. I just wanted to stop gambling. I just didn't want to be poor anymore and keep being broke and
mm,
ruining it and lying to people. Um, so yeah, it was the gambling I went in there for, but then I'd made a very conscious decision very early on that I wasn't going to take anything. I wasn't going to gamble. I wasn't going to drink alcohol. I wasn't going to take drugs. And I made that decision when I was in rehab, and I've stuck to that decision. Um, because one just will lead to the other for me. And
yeah,
I'm in no guise as to I could just do one or the other. No, I can't, because I know it will always end up to gambling. Um, and that's just not the way that I choose to live my life today.
yeah. That kind of self-awareness though, I mean, it's fantastic and it's really admirable because if someone was struggling with numerous things, like the idea of having to give up all of them at the same time could feel overwhelming. But if you know that one always leads to the other, I think that breaking that chain is what's, the most important thing. So, congrats
Yeah.
again.
I think you just have to be really honest with yourself, very,
Mm,
very brutally honest. Like, if you lie to yourself, you're only going to hurt yourself. And I was in a safe space where brutal honesty was what I went in with. I had nothing to lose.
mm,
I had nothing to lose by being honest with myself and with others. And to join all these resources, to join these groups, to join the fellowship, to hold myself accountable, so that I've got a set of rules and ways that I live by every single day, because it keeps me sane, it keeps me better, it keeps me on the road.
yeah,
And without them, I don't know what I would do, but I wouldn't want to put myself in a position where I don't do what I need to do every day to keep myself well.
sure.
And it's a small sacrifice. It can be like Groundhog Day sometimes, doing the same shit every day, but it's a small sacrifice for the beautiful life that I've managed to create for myself because of recovery.
Yeah. Well, let's hear about the beautiful life. What is it that you do today?
So I am a peer aid mentor. So I help facilitate gambling recovery groups, and I do one-on-one sessions with clients, empower them to come into the gambling space. I'm also a public speaker. I share my lived experience on some podcasts and for different companies that are teaching the operators of the gambling sites of how to recognise when people need help, when they're things get flagged up and things like that. Their gambling things get flagged up, and they can recognise if somebody needs help. And I just share my lived experience to kind of educate and open people's minds to that. I do some panel work as well. And yeah, so my whole thing is to just empower people to come into recovery, full stop. But also in the UK, in the recovery groups that I've been in, there's not many black women or black people, and or many ethnic minorities as a whole in these spaces. And that kind of got me thinking, like, I can't be the only gambling cokehead black woman going. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
So my whole thing was, I have a mouth, and I don't mind using it, and I want to use it for good,
mm,
and I want to use it to help people. So use my voice to, hopefully, if somebody sees me and they see someone that looks like them or sounds like them, or they can relate to in some way, then maybe that will give them the courage that they need to change their lives, because it can save a life. And that's not being dramatic. Drinking drugs are bad, but gambling is just as bad, and gambling takes just as many lives. People just don't realize it.
right. Do you think that there's a particular reason why there is a lack of ethnic minority representation in these programs? Is it because, these programs are marketing specifically towards certain groups, or is it just because of like something that maybe I don't understand?
I think it could be like a cultural thing, to be
Mm,
honest. I mean, the way that I was raised is what goes on behind closed doors stay behind closed doors, kind of
mm,
pretty strict in that. Um, Getting outside help is always seen as a thing of shame.
Mm.
Not very much supported from what I've known from the people that I've grown up around, and really just keeping your mouth shut, and also to be seen as weak and
Mm.
embarrassing, um, especially for gambling, I think, because a lot of people's minds is, why don't you just stop?
Right.
And it's like, duh, I wish I could just stop. I would have done it a long time ago before ruining my existence, but here we
Right.
are. Um, but yeah, no, I just think it's a cultural thing. I just think it's just, they think it's a sign of weakness. They'd feel embarrassed and ashamed, like we all do.
Mm.
But I don't, the lack of support, I think, as well, within their families, or understanding
Mm.
within the families. Yeah, just a lack of support and understanding. I just think that there's not enough of it
Mm.
in our communities sometimes, and a lot of judgment and being spoken about. And especially as a woman, if you're a woman and you're also a mother, um, yeah, you can't leave your kids to go to rehab.
Mm.
You can't take that break to go and get yourself better. You can't admit there's something wrong because you're a bad mum. Like
Mm.
that judgment is heavy. And I think that stops a lot of people from speaking out and getting the help that they need in many areas, but especially also in gambling.
Wow. So then what's the fix for it? How do we begin to reach more people and get more people to understand that it's okay to seek out help? I mean, sharing your story, I imagine, is the first step, but what comes after that?
I think going into local communities, which I know that, an amazing guy called Ryan from Bet No More is doing that. He's going into ethnic minorities. He is, working on this tirelessly over here to bring that engagement in. And I think the more people of different ethnic minorities that are willing to speak publicly about this kind of stuff will go a long way. It just takes one person to make a difference. It really, really does. And yeah, I just think it can go a long way. But I just think it's a slow process, but it's also a process that is growing. All the white people that I know in these recovery spaces are so open, so supportive. They can recognise that the problems are there. They can recognise that there is an ethnic minority, and they're doing all they can to also get ethnic minorities. And I mean, it's not an ignorant, closed-minded situation. We want to help. Everybody wants to help, no matter where we come from, what colour we are.
Mm.
We've all got the same end goal, and that is to help people get better.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. That's all we want. Collectively, that's all we want. And yeah, I wouldn't even be here without all those people that have helped me along the way and supported me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would just say, like, to ethnic minorities, if they're afraid of white people or don't want to work with white people, like in the spaces that I've been a part of, they have been nothing but good, kind, open-minded and helpful to me. And they are like that with every single person that they come across. Race really doesn't come into it when it comes to giving people help. That you will
Yeah.
get the help no matter where you're from.
I remember when I was first going to support group meetings, I didn't want to go. And so like one thing that I would tell myself was like, I was like 40 years younger than the next youngest person at some of these meetings, and I was like, "Oh, well, I shouldn't be here. I'm too young to be here. These aren't my people." Like I would come up with excuses, and I imagine that it's possible that that could exist as well. It's like, "Oh, everyone's white," or "Oh, everyone's a guy, so this isn't something that would benefit me." So I'm really happy that you come on and you've shared this, and you've even said at the end, like, these spaces exist because people all want to pursue this end goal of helping those struggling with gambling. Um,
Yeah.
what's next for you? What's in a year from now? What do you hope to have accomplished in this space?
I hope that I accomplish to be able to create or co-create a group for ethnic minorities and to bring more people into gambling recovery. I hope to be able to speak about my lived experience and learn and grow in that, to help other people and to just be a part of the changes that are being made, and just to be able to make a difference and see that difference in the next year, to see that there's black women in these groups and in these meetings, and that they're getting the help that they need. I mean, even if it's just one or two black women, I'll be over the moon, because everybody deserves recovery. Everyone's worth recovery. Everyone's worth being free from their addictions. We've all suffered enough, whether we've caused the pain ourselves or not.
Yeah.
It's just time to choose yourself, time to choose a better life, try to choose freedom and peace of mind and just happiness, and just that peace that you get from being in recovery. It's just, money can't buy that.
Yeah.
It's just worth everything.
And so I guess to finish, like, I understand that a day in your life during active addiction was spent alone, isolated, using, gambling, feeling stress, even going into debt and borrowing and or stealing money. What's a day in your life look like now in recovery, 17 months clean?
Well, I start my day with a series of prayers, meditation, do a gratitude list every day, um, speak to other people in recovery in the mornings, um, probably do some lived experience work at this point or something along those lines. Been pretty hectic lately, and filming with news people and stuff like that. So that's been pretty cool. I go to a meeting every single day. During the week, I take the weekends off. But I mean, sometimes depending on what I'm doing, I will go on a meeting on the weekend. I try and be a service in service in my fellowship as well, and I have service there. And yeah, I get to talk to my daughter every day, my sister, and yeah, I just got a beautiful life today. I get to go out and experience whatever it is that I choose to experience, and that's the beauty of it. I get to choose to experience. I get to choose to take it in. But life is pretty busy with me. I do the mentoring. I'm a sponsor. I do some TV stuff and that kind of stuff. So when I get a day to just do nothing, I like to just do nothing.
Sure.
But I've got a whole world of really amazing friends. Got an amazing family in my sister and my niece and my daughter. And yeah, it's just a beautiful full life today.
That's
Even on the
fantastic.
worst days, it's still beautiful. I live in a lot of gratitude in my life. I'm a very grateful, positive person at this point in my life. I wasn't always that way.
Kiki, I just want to thank you once again for coming on and sharing your story. And I know that it's about to be your birthday, so I just want to once again wish you a happy birthday. To anyone in the audience that wants to hear another story of someone in recovery, check out this video next. And let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.